BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Today, the US gives a thumbs up to the sale of gene-edited pigs developed at Edinburgh's Roslin Institute. And what can we learn from dried peas? First, though, the sudden suspension of England's biggest environmental scheme, the Sustainable Farming Incentive, earlier this year was met with horror and disbelief by farmers and environmentalists alike. And it got us thinking back to the very beginning of the transition from the old EU farm subsidy system and the Common Agricultural Policy to the new public money for public goods approach that we have in England today. So much so that this weekend here on Radio 4, you can hear a specially commissioned programme all about it, presented by our very own agricultural policy nerd, if that is the right word, Charlotte Smith, who is with me now. Charlotte, really? Seriously?
It is a bit of a hard sell, isn't it? A half hour on agricultural policy. I do appreciate this may seem like a niche interest, but agricultural policy is also environmental policy and food policy. So it has an impact on the landscape, on food, and of course on what we pay for both. In this programme, which we're calling the Landscape Revolution, we've gone right back to the start of this big change in agricultural policy.
OK, so right back to Brexit then.
Yeah, when we left the EU, we also, of course, as you say, left the Common Agricultural Policy, the CAP. To be honest, even some ardent Remainers saw that as an opportunity to come up with something better. So as agricultural policy has devolved, England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland each set about designing their own. Now, we do look mainly at England in this programme because they have gone furthest, fastest.
OK, and I mean, this transition, it really is a big deal. It's a massive change, isn't it?
The biggest change for a generation, moving from a system which paid farmers based on the amount of land they had to, in England, a public money only for public goods approach. So farmers can get paid, for instance, for planting trees under a series of schemes, the Environmental Land Management Schemes, or ELMS. They could, of course, as some have, decide not to take any public money and farm more intensively to make up the financial shortfall. The government decided right at the start of this in 2018 that as food is paid for by the market, it doesn't count as a public good. The National Farmers Union unsuccessfully argued against that, as former President Minette Batters explains.
Every country that puts subsidy into farming does it for two reasons. They do it to make sure that farmers can ride out volatility and stop food prices spiking. I absolutely believe you can do both. You can invest in the environment, public monies for public goods, but it doesn't answer the question about how we deal with risk. And the land-based payment was the only way European farmers had of dealing with that and paying for the high cost of regulation that farmers have to adhere to.
OK, and all of this coincided with the phasing out of those EU-style subsidies in England as well, didn't it?
Yeah, because you're moving from one system to another. So in 2021, those farm subsidies began to go. A farm business which in 2020 got about £100,000, this year will get around £7,000. The idea was that money will go into ELMS and then farmers could get into them. Now, the biggest of those, the Sustainable Farming Incentive, the SFI, aimed to get 70% of farmers involved. But as we've covered on this programme, it was slow to be rolled out and initially didn't prove very popular. Payment rates were then raised, more people signed up, and earlier this year, new applications to the SFI were closed. Now, the government said that showed how popular the scheme had become, and they pointed out that they'd inherited an uncapped scheme from the previous Conservative government, but one which has always had a finite budget. Ministers say they will re-announce a targeted scheme in the summer, but as we hear from the Lake District farmer and best-selling author James Rebanks, it's led farmers like him who signed up to this public money for public goods approach feeling let down.
The trust has been broken, the damage has been done, and the farmers will carry on, the business people. It's not that I'm worried about. It's that we were supposed to be part of a collective endeavour where we were going to mend nature across the British landscape. We were going to create this sort of sustainable food system that did all the things we need. That's what's gone. The progressive green vision has absolutely gone. It's been killed.
That's Cumbrian farmer James Rebanks. It sounds really interesting. Just remind us when we can hear it, Charlotte.
Assuming it's finished, it will be on Sunday lunchtime.
OK, well plugged. A really interesting listen for this coming Sunday afternoon. OK, back to today's programme. And all this week we've been taking a closer look at pulses, the dried seeds of crops like beans, lentils and peas for both human and animal food. In the UK, the peas we eat are generally frozen or fresh, a big splash of vitamin-filled green on our plates. But dried peas are a major source of protein to millions of people all around the world. Scientists at the John Innes Centre in Norwich have been working with researchers in China, the USA and France to uncover the genome of 700 different varieties of pea from many different countries to help develop better commercial varieties. Anna Hill met up with Dr. Noam Kayut at their germplasm resource unit, where a slightly mind-blowing 3,500 different pea varieties are stored.
You may be able to hear the fans behind this big, thick door I'm standing outside. Behind these doors are some secrets belonging to some very special pulses, the peas from around the world. We're going to get pretty chilly because it's about 4 degrees.
It's going to be a bit cold and very dry. Yes, so here on these shelves we have samples of about 3,500 pea samples from all around the world.
We've got shelves and shelves of jars of peas which are being stored here and can be kept indefinitely.
Yeah, so in these jars, as you can see, the different colors, different size, different shapes. You can feel it's cold, but if you'll breathe out, you'll also feel that it's very dry. In these conditions, we can keep seeds for several decades. Peas are generally long-lived, so half a century would probably be easy in this room.
Tell me what your group has been looking at.
We chose a panel of 700 pea varieties that best represent this global diversity. And we sequenced the genome of all of these 700. And this generated huge amount of data.
So Noah is just opening up this box, which he has here. Wow. And on here is a card, and stuck onto the card are all the different varieties of peas that you've been looking at. They are so varied. There's a tiny little black one there.
These are wild.
A big green one.
Yeah, so the tiny black one that you picked up, they are wild varieties. They are from the Middle East. The big brown, these are marrowfat, so for mushy peas that people like to eat in the UK. But really these cards, what they're here to demonstrate is the different traits that we studied in the seed.
So you end up, when you've analysed all of these, with a list of traits.
We screened more than 70 traits in addition to those that the Mendelian traits that of course are of high scientific interest. Traits, yield components, so a pea can have more pods. Within each pod you can have more seeds or less seeds. The seed itself can be bigger or smaller or heavier. So we looked at all of these, not because this specific variety that you're looking at now is of importance, but because when we associate it with the genomic, we can find the areas that we need to focus on when we improve the varieties that we actually grow in the fields. And we know that this will be picked up by the industry to accelerate breeding.
What can you do with the information that you've gathered?
With such high-resolution information, you can much more accurately predict how crosses will behave. And that can really change the way we breed peas and improve our varieties. So if, for example, we want to have more protein or we want to study disease resistance, the old-fashioned approach is growing and characterizing, and this is huge effort. And that's what the breeders very successfully are doing for many decades now. But if we want to harness computational power and AI to breed crops faster, and we must do it if we want to feed the growing population in the world, we need better genomic resources of highly correct varieties, and that's exactly what we did in this collaborative work.
Across the globe, they are really important as a protein source for many, many countries, aren't they?
There is a growing demand for plant-based protein, and peas is one very good source in this part of the world, so UK and Northern Europe. Our study and studies that improve the capability to breed new varieties may just make peas more economically viable for farmers to grow in this part of the world in the future, which will make them a more important crop.
Dr. Noam Kayut with Anna Hill. Well, from the genetic makeup of peas to pigs, And gene editing technology that makes pigs immune to a highly infectious virus developed at Edinburgh University's Roslin Institute has been approved for use by the US Food and Drug Administration. Current legislation doesn't permit its use in the UK. The virus causes a disease called PRRS, or Porcine, Reproductive and Respiratory Syndrome, which causes premature births in pigs, as well as other painful symptoms, and costs the pig industry billions. Any technology that involves altering genes is controversial. Critics say the long-term consequences are simply unknown, but those in favour believe innovations like this have huge potential for eradicating disease and improving global food security. Edinburgh University has been collaborating with the livestock genetics company Genus on this project. And I've been speaking to the university's Dr. Christine Tate-Burkett, who's been involved for more than 7 years.
Oh, it's a massive bit of gratification. I'm very passionate about this project. I grew up on a pig farm. Luckily, I grew up in a country where PRRS has been eradicated, but I've seen it in many other countries, how animals suffer from this disease firsthand. Working on this as a researcher and actually seeing this implemented in pigs now, and probably these pigs hitting the market in a few years' time, finally adding another important tool to the toolbox of combating PRRS infection worldwide is extremely gratifying to see.
Can you explain what you do to the DNA and why that means it won't become infected?
So what we've done with the PRRS-resistant pigs is that we've changed basically the lock shape of the protein that the virus has to bind to actually be able to enter the pig cells. This looks like 9 pearls on a string, and we have removed pearl number 5 to change the look of that pearl necklace, so to speak. So a minor modification, the pig is still 100% pig. We've not actually added anything non-piggy to this.
And the edit has no other impact on the health or the behaviour of the pigs.
So this is a big question. We're obviously here not to play God, but to actually do a safe process of genome edit. And once we have edited them in our small cohort of research pigs, we have checked whether these animals are healthy, produce normal, healthy offspring. And this has been taken to another level by Genus PIC, who are developing these pigs for market. They have had to go through 3 generations of breeding to actually get FDA approval.
OK, and FDA, that's the US Food and Drug Administration. And in the UK, do you have any indication about if and when this kind of technology, these kinds of pigs might be approved here?
What we have in the UK since 2023 is the Next Generation Breeding Technology Act, and that defines new breeding technologies. That still means only England, actually, because Next Generation Breeding Technology Act doesn't apply to Wales, Northern Ireland or Scotland. But what it would entail would be a similar regulatory process to the FDA approval, but we have no details yet of how this regulatory process will look like.
People who are opposed to gene editing may have ethical concerns about doing this, the potential risks in the future. How do you respond to that?
We know that this is a welfare issue in animals, and it's both an ethical question. Should we do it or shouldn't we do it? We should do it to prevent disease. So actually, I would argue in terms of welfare, these animals are potentially better safeguarded than conventionally bred animals.
Just because you can do it, do you think consumers will accept it? Do you think they're going to want to buy pork that comes from genetically edited pigs?
I think we all have a bit of a hesitation when we read about something being bioengineered, biotechnology, because we have negative associations historically. But what we can say is that the World Health Organization tells us that in the 20, 30 years that people have been eating genetically modified organisms, it actually has no impact on our health.
Dr. Christine Tate-Burkett. And that is all of your farming for today. I'm Kaz Graham. The producer is Rebecca Rooney. And the programme is a BBC Audio Bristol production.